get out. People, what's up? I'm bringing you a quick video today. I need to shut my dang door. Quick. And it is which one I would recommend. Nintendo Entertainment System NES or Super Nintendo Entertainment System or Super NES or SNES or SNES or whatever they call it. Super Nintendo. I just call it Super Nintendo. But let's see what my opinion is. So right here I got the we're gonna start off with the controllers, and here's a NES controller right here. Now this thing is pretty cool. This is what it looks like. Put down the vertical angle. It has two buttons. The D-pad, actually 4 buttons if you count select and select, or start and select. You hold it like this most of the time. You can hold it like this, even like this sometimes. It's really weird. But unless, of course, you're using like NES Advantage, or not NES Advantage, it's a stupid piece of plastic where it's going to go like, put the speed at your fingertips. I don't need that. If I wanted to use something faster, I would get a turbo controller like the NES Max or NES Advantage. I do not have the dog bone controller, though I don't. This is the only NES kind of controller I have, the base one, which I think is the best one. So yep, this is a pretty nice controller. And then a Super Nintendo controller, which I believe to be the best video game controller of all time. You got the 2 little shoulder buttons up top. This is where your fingers will rest. Press down on it. I thought it has the like lavender stuff. You got like the different purple. Almost looks like purple M&Ms, kind of. I don't know. I love the color of this thing. You got select and start, and pad, and then it just fits right in your hands like this. Personally, this is the most comfortable video game controller ever made, because your fingers fit right on the shoulder buttons, and your thumb lands on the D-pad. Then you can just go over to the select button and start button on each side, and then the way that it is, you can like move your thumb around. Press buttons. If you're playing a game like Mario, you can just hold down Y. And you can just press B, and then you'll jump. It's a sprinting, and just jump. It's a lot easier than the the original NES controller, where you would have to be like this. Which it works fine. It's just that it's not as good because the game wasn't as responsive. So controller goes to SNES, and now onto the graphics. Now this one's a bit of a no-brainer, Super Nintendo. But we're gonna give this one actually a tie. There are some NES games that have really good art styles, like Super Mario Bros. 3. Zelda 2 I thought had a pretty neat art style. It might just be me though. But also, another really good graphical NES game is Blaster Master. Super C and Contra were pretty good in graphics, but it all just depends on art style. Because if you have a crappy looking game, it doesn't matter how good it looks. So yeah, and then there's certain games that have different things. Yeah, I'm gonna give this one a tie. So Super Nintendo is at 2 points, and NES is at 1 point. So, and whenever we take it up, we're gonna say which one has more bad games. This is very hard to debate, but I think the obvious winner is NES, which has more bad games. But because of all the LJN titles on it, like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. I don't even know if that was LJN, but Back to the Future games, pretty much anything, like Raymond Roger Rabbit, anything like that. Those games all pretty much sucked. Hide, Light, Fester's Quest, I could go on for hours and I probably wouldn't be able to think of them all. Super Nintendo had games like Shaq Fu, oh yeah, and for NES Action 52. And Super Nintendo had Wizard of Oz. So both of them had their share of bad games, but NES has more bad games, so we'll give it No points? Well, we'll give the SNES 1 point. Now here's the thing that I would just like to mention real quick. Like stronger, which one has a stronger library of games? Not overall games. Which one has a stronger lineup of games? Like, it might not make sense. Like, which one has the more games? Like, more games that are just straightforward. This would go to NES, because I feel like the 16-bit era was a bit of a cluster. Because so many new consoles that were coming out, and they sucked. Like, CDI, all that kind of stuff was coming out. And it was really hard to keep track, and it was just, like, such a bad era for gaming. When it came down to that, it was just such a cluster. If you stayed to the familiar games, you were pretty much safe. If you went out, you got crushed. But now for the NES, it's pretty much streamlined. But now for yeah, like 2 points to NES and 1 to Super Nintendo. So yeah, I'm not gonna base my opinion on points, by the way. But I also want to say about actual games that came out on the system. NES has games like the first 3 Mario games, the 2 Legend of Zelda games, the first Metroid, Blaster Master, Punch-Out, Super C and Contra, Metal Gear, pretty much like anything like that is really, really good. And then you have the Ninja Gaiden games, the Castlevania games. Those are some pretty difficult ones. The Mega Man games. Franchises like that are really, really good on NES. And then on Super Nintendo, you have more standout titles, like ones that are just like singular titles that stand out. But NES has a ton of good games, but Super Nintendo has games like Indiana Jones' Greatest Adventures, the Super Star Wars series, Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Super Metroid, Super Castlevania 4, Super Mario Kart, F-Zero is an amazing game. Have a lot of great games on there. So, it really comes down to it. Pilot Wings was another one. But really, if I had to make my choice for the one with the better games, this is really hard. I would say NES, because there's just more of them, but quality is better than quantity. But I personally enjoyed the NES better. And for one final thing, music. This one's a tie. So let's see what it all came down to. NES was like that revolutionary console. Picked up the gaming industry after the Atari 2600 and television and ColecoVision back in the second generation. And they crashed down. The video game crashed in 1983. Was it 1983 or 1982? I forget. But still, and then Nintendo rose up. And then Sega came in. But this console was revolutionary. Has some really good games on it. Some of the best games of all time. Super Nintendo once again revolutionized the genre with its 16-bit graphics. But it had already been done. So, it's not as revolutionary as before. Because the Sega Genesis came out in 1989, while the Super Nintendo came out in 1991. And, oh yeah, another thing that was really innovative about the Super Nintendo was the FX chip. Games like Star Fox and Doom, they were pretty revolutionary for the system. Like, with that 3D environment and everything. So, pretty revolutionary in terms of that. And, which one do I prefer? It's really, really difficult. But when it comes down to it, I would think I would have to pick the NES. This console, I just prefer. I don't know what it is about it. Even though there's no one definitive game console. There's too many to decide what my favorite would be. But out of these two, I would say NES is my favorite. Doesn't mean Super Nintendo's bad. Super Nintendo is still an amazing console. I would recommend it. So that has been my little opinion, and if I went off, I have to glance at that. So,